So with Michigan State, it's very simple. You know, a lot of people are going to point to the over under, and the over under in Vegas right now is 5.5. And this 5.5 right here is is juiced to the over. So it's 58% of it's implied that they're going to go over. And if they didn't go over, that would be a total mess because there's a lot to be expected at MSU. And Jonathan Smith, this is clear, needs to be better in year two. Just needs to be better. And with the quarterback that he has and Aiden Childs, who a lot of people in the scouting community, a couple people that I've talked to in terms of his development, they think he could be a potential first round draft pick. His arm is elite, and he's got an elite weapon in Nick Marsh, who is just a total class of a character. Nick Marsh is a guy that when you think about a classy individual, a guy that could represent your team, this is a guy that you would point to. Him and Childs are both very classy individuals. And with that being said, they got a lot of issues. There's a little bit of issues that need to work themselves out. Obviously, when we get to the season, we're going to start to see is that revamped offensive line that the only starter left from last year is Stanton Ramil. How does that work out? Do you get better by the third or fourth game? That's the main issue right there. But for me, I think Jonathan Smith is going to be asked to be better. You know, the over under 5.5. It's just the over. 58% of it is implied that the Spartans will go over 55.5. And my point here is I kind of expect 8 wins. Like I look at that schedule that they have, and there is no major hurdle. There's a couple games, USC, Michigan. Those are games that definitely do pack a punch. But you look at last year, you lost to Boston College. I think that was a winnable game. You lost to you won in Maryland, but that should have been a winnable game. There was many winnable games last year, and I thought the Michigan game was a winnable game as well. But I thought they were outcoached strictly because Jonathan Smith outcoached himself. I thought with Aiden Childs, I thought there was a lot of deep shots, and I think that you have a young quarterback like Aiden Childs, let's get him in rhythm. Let's start doing some slants. Let's start doing some flat, some curls. Let's start doing some, in and out route, in route. Let's do an underneath route just to get him in rhythm. Just to get him in rhythm, and then when you get him in rhythm, then you can hit the deep shot. I felt like they were too focused on hitting the deep shot last year, and that's fine. I mean, that's if that's the way that they're going to coach, but let's play the field. You know, I like the way when you're coaching and you got a quarterback like Childs, you got to take it into account that he's a young player. He's going to make mistakes, but how do you keep him from making those mistakes? And over and over again last year, I thought Jonathan Smith put in Childs in the worst place to succeed. Like I thought Joe Rossi as a defensive coordinator, I thought he was the talent was just not there. They didn't have a pass rush, but if the pass rush can be better, that would be special. But look, there are a lot of questions at Michigan State, and it's not the fault of anybody else. But Jonathan Smith needs to be better in year two. I think we all can agree to that. If you're a Spartan fan, if you're average college football viewer, I think you could say to everyone that the Spartans should be better. When you got a quarterback like Aiden Childs and you got a wide receiver like Nick Marsh, your offense needs to be a lot better. Now we're going to see what they do in the run game, and we're going to see what happens with the offensive line. That's the major X factor in the season. Does the offensive line get fixed? And that's where we're going to have a real conversation when we see this in front of us. Is the offensive line fixed? But for me, the most important thing for Michigan State is look, this is what I expect. I expect 8 wins. I think it's pretty fair. And when you look at Michigan State's schedule, I don't see a hard game on that schedule. I mean, there's a couple games where I go, okay, that could be a game where they play Western Michigan at the start of the year. You play Boston College, you play Youngstown State. That should potentially be a 3-0 start. And then you go to USC, you play Nebraska, you play UCLA. I don't think UCLA is going to give you anything. So that's a game that should be won. Indiana, that could be a toss-up game. Who knows what Indiana is after last year. You go play you play Michigan, you play Minnesota, you play Penn State, which that's going to be a hard game. That's an automatic loss, in my opinion. But you look at a lot of these games. I mean, USC, like I think that Michigan State could really pass it all over the park on Lincoln Riley's defense. I think when you play Nebraska, what Dylan Raiola shows up this year, that could be a issue. But when I look at the rest of the schedule, outside of Penn State, outside of potentially Michigan, all these games are winnable games. I still think the Michigan games are winnable. So I'm not saying that Jonathan Smith should be fired if he doesn't get the 8 wins, but that is my expectation because there's a lot of flip-flop games here. I mean, like you got UCLA, you got Minnesota, which I think is a total win for Michigan State. Like they should definitely win that game. Maryland, Iowa. I think Iowa does give you a little bit of their defenses are routinely good, but you should be able to win that because they don't score much. But I look at them having a 3-0 start. USC game's a flip-flop game. Nebraska's a flip-flop game. Indiana I don't think they're going to be better than last year, so that's a flip-flop game. Michigan's always a flip-flop game because, you could always expect Michigan State to show up, except for that one year that they fired Mel Tucker. That was a total just real ridiculous. Minnesota, and then they play Penn State. Like I said, there's only 2 games on that schedule that I could say Michigan could win. I definitely, Michigan could win, and Penn State could win. I think Penn State's the only one that you say for certain that they're going to win. I think Penn State's a great team, but you know what? The thing about Penn State is, no matter how talented the roster is, they could always James Franklin themselves. So, look, this is going to be a big year for Jonathan Smith. The schedule is set up for Jonathan Smith to succeed, and there's no excuse for Michigan State to be a team where you go, they got the 6 wins. 7, 8 is the expectation. My expectation is 8, but if you said 7, cool with it. But I have 8. I think, you could start out, Western could be a win. Boston College should be a win. Youngstown State should be a win. I'll give USC winning. I'll give Nebraska winning. So that's 2 losses. You should beat UCLA 4. Indiana, I think that I don't know what Indiana is. That could be 5. Michigan could be 6. Minnesota should be 7. Iowa 8. Maryland 9. There's 9 winnable games on the schedule. 9 winnable games. And we'll see what these teams look like. But for me, I cannot sit here with a straight face and say that Michigan State should expect to just win 6 games. I don't think that's correct. And the over-under in Vegas is telling you that people are saying that Michigan State will go over the 5.5 wins. So it'll be very interesting. Now, we have the Michigan State preview coming out Monday. So if you like this video, the season preview will come out Monday. I'll preview it in totality. I'll have Michigan State. Lions will be at the end of the week, and then we'll talk about all that there. So stay tuned to JC Sports. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.